Cool. Since we got 2 minutes, I want to run to the bathroom real quick, make sure I'm good.
The question is, are you ready?
What do you guys want to talk about?
Let me talk to you.
Throwdown Nation, we are live. It is a Monday night. We are rolling on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter /X, Facebook, and Twitch. It is episode 101 of the Throwdown with Matt. And tonight we are throwing down with a Georgia-based pro wrestler, deathmatch specialist, stuntman, DDP yoga employee, and filmmaker, the Killbilly, Nathan Mowery. How you doing tonight, Nathan?
Man, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Man, I can't complain. Like I said, it's been a good day, man. And you know, for everybody that's watching this live, if you have questions or comments, throw them in the chat, and we will either tackle them as we go or do a little Q&A at the end. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first and most obvious question, and that is, how long have you been wrestling? And sort of the B-side to that question, what drew you to death matches?
All right, so I started wrestling. I'm kind of like in my, I guess, third or fourth year. The first year I didn't really do a lot, so I don't really count it. Like my first match was in 2021, and it was like a rumble. So that was like the only thing I really did. And then the following year, I started to do a little bit more. So I could say roughly 3.5 years, however that math checks out. I'm not entirely sure. But what made me want to become a deathmatch wrestler of all things? Like I've grown up being a massive wrestling fan. But I've always been drawn to the more extreme side of just entertainment in general. I mean, I grew up watching things like, Jackass or whatever, and then when YouTube started in 2005, and I was about 15 or something at the time. That's when they started uploading like these clips from like CZW or XPW. So I got exposed to
Mhm.
Sick Nick Amando and New Jack and these people that I didn't see on Monday Night Raw per se. And I remember being 14, 15 years old, seeing Nick Mondo fly off the roof at Tournament of Death with John Zandig, and my mind was blowing. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I have ever seen. And I've been obsessed with it since. And I started, I'm a filmmaker by trade. That's what I've been doing for the past, 12, 13 years of my life. And then once, and I ended up working in the wrestling sphere of things. And I think what made me want to become a wrestler is I've always been drawn to stunts. I've always been drawn just to doing crazy, dangerous things. If you go on my YouTube channel, you can see videos of me doing jackass-like stunts, setting me and my brother on fire, just doing crazy things well before I was ever a wrestler. And I just had this energy, this desire to do things crazy. And I'm already a super speeder here in Georgia, so I can't drive in my car fast anymore. So I have to find a new outlet to do something nuts to just get that rush that I so desperately need that I just can't shake off me. And then through filmmaking and working through DDP Yoga, we were close with like Cody Rhodes. And when they started AEW, we were heavily involved in the production in the early days. We shot a lot of the vignettes and backstage stuff for AEW. AEW brought in a lot of the DDP Yoga production crew to do that. And just through that, I met a lot of different people. I met QT Marshall and I met Luther. And one time we were in Chicago, and I believe it was the night before All Out, like when I think the first All Out. And I went to a GCW show, and I heard a little bit about GCW, but not too much. And the main event of the show was Nick Gage versus Effie. And these are just two like completely different aesthetics and characters, but they just told a great story. And I remember just being in the crowd thinking like, this is the coolest thing ever. And that moment made me want to become a wrestler. And especially when it comes to the death match side of things, because that connection that Nick Gage has with the crowd is one of the most authentic, unique types of energies you would ever experience, So Nick Gage is what made me want, Nick Gage and Effie, I should say, was what made me want to become a death match wrestler, or at least, make that attempt. I've always been drawn to the craziness. So yeah, that was the main thing that kind of started that, I guess, desire.
Got you. So, who actually trained you?
So at first, just because I knew QT Marshall through AEW and just shooting a bunch of stuff, I was kind of just asking. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm kind of interested in possibly coming by and training or at the Nightmare Factory," and he, invited me to come, and I went over there. And by that time, I started to become good friends with Luther from AEW, and he moved to Atlanta, and he was like, "Hey, I'll train you one on one," kind of thing. So I went to the Nightmare Factory pretty inconsistently, honestly. When I first started, I probably just went pretty inconsistently for a few months. Then COVID happened, and then I was kind of like, you know what? Maybe this thing is not for me. And then I just stopped going to training. And then my fiance bought me a cameo from Nick Gage, and it was just him to be like, chase your dreams. One day we'll chop it up. We'll get in the ring together. You have to do it. And then it just made me really want to pursue it more. And Luther ended up moving to Florida during that time. And at Southern Honor Wrestling up in Canton, we had this show called the Rumble Jack that I was a part of it. And I was going to do the spot where I was going to go through this barbed wire board. And Jimmy Wayne Gang was there. And Jimmy was just talking to me, and he was just like, "Hey, just chain wrestle with Jazzy, his daughter." And I just couldn't do it. And then he was just like, "Oh, man." And so he offered to train me, like Jimmy Wayne Gang. And that was about 2, 3 years ago. And so now we meet up every week and we just train for a few hours, and just been learning from him. And learning from his daughter Jazzy and her boyfriend Teriyaki. Those are the people that I mainly train with and learn from. They're great. Jimmy is so smart. But the way I got connected with Jimmy is kind of its own weird, funny story because I work for Diamond Dallas Page, and if people know that history, Jimmy Yang and Dallas have history. And one time I picked up Dallas from the airport and I dropped him off at his house. Dallas is like, "Hey, you want to go on the back porch? We can have a beer and just hang out for a minute." And I was like, "Yeah, man, that'd be awesome. Let's do that." And we're sitting there in the back and just talking. And for whatever reason, the Jimmy Yang story about how Jimmy Yang would go to his house, Dallas's house, when he was a kid and trick or treat, and Dallas would be like, "Hey, help me, set up Christmas decorations or whatever." And they kind of bonded in that way when Jimmy was a kid. And I was telling him, like, man, I always really liked Jimmy Wang Yang. I thought he was probably one of the more super underrated wrestlers, and he was one of my favorites. And people gave me shit for it back in the day because I just love I love Jimmy Wang Yang. I thought he was awesome. I thought his character was awesome. And Dallas is like, "Oh, that's cool." And it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he just gets his phone and goes, "Here's Jimmy Yang." And I'm just like, what am I supposed to say to this guy at like 2 o'clock in the morning? And then Jimmy just was like, "Oh, DDP's calling me. I guess I need to answer this." And then Dallas hands me the phone, and Jimmy's like, "Hello?" And I'm like, "Hey, man, you don't know me, but I'm Nathan. I think you're awesome and underrated." And Jimmy's like, "Hey, cool, I guess." So fast forward to that show I was on, and he was just like, I saw him. I was like, "Hey, man, I don't know if you remember this, but Dallas put me on the phone with you randomly in the middle of the night one time." And he kind of laughed. He liked it. So we developed kind of like a cool bond and friendship. So I've been training with him for 3 years, and it's been awesome. Love him.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, what I'm going to do real quick, to give people that might be watching this that are not familiar with you just a little taste, I found a promo of yours on YouTube from before you made your XPW debut. And I'm going to share my screen and play that promo because I just thought it was pretty cool. So,
yeah.
So let me do that real quick here.
The Killbilly Nathan Mowery versus Eric Dillinger XPW in New York, New Jersey in the Hard Ballroom on June 23rd. It is the debut of the Killbilly Nathan Mowery. And if you're not familiar with the Human Grindhouse film, then let me enlighten you. You see, I was born and raised in the sawmills of East Tennessee, where I was taught a mixed bag of Southern morals and ethics. You see, on one hand, you're taught to serve your community, to give to those who have less, but yet on this other hand, you are taught that if anybody threatens the safety of your family, then you have every right to blow their brains out all over the front porch. And as you sit there as a child in that holler, and you see the ambulances drive away, and you watch the police go home, but the newsman's sitting there asking him, why? Why did you do this? And he responds, because sometimes in life, you gotta do what you gotta do. And Eric Dillinger, on June 23rd, I am gonna do what it is that I have to do, because you only get one shot at a first impression, and you will never forget my name. So if that means I have to carve it into your fucking forehead, then so be it. Because I will hold your body looking up at the lights, covered in blood, hacked and slashed, and I will look at Rob Black and say, look at what you made me do. June 23rd, you will remember the name of the Killbilly Nathan Mowery. Long live.
Love it, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love the description of the Human Grindhouse film. That is a great turn of a phrase right there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I enjoyed that one.
So, one of my recent guests actually brought up a topic that led to kind of an interesting question that I've included in my repertoire now, and that is Try to sum your wrestling persona up in 5 words.
Oh man, 5 words. Oh man, this is good. Dark, barbaric, southern slasher. Um, Violence. I don't know. This five words I feel like associate me. It just off the top of my head. So I would have a better answer if I could think on it more. But that's like the first 5 words that come to my head. But it's being southern, being super just visceral and dark and very violent. And I kind of like the unpredictable and just super violent types of characters in wrestling. That's always what I've been drawn to. I like making people feel uncomfortable with violence. I like popping people's skin just to watch people's faces in the crowd realize that they're seeing real mayhem and blood, and it just thrills me. So those are the things that I try to get out of wrestling.
Gotcha. Speed round. Matt Tremont.
A deathmatch god. I mean, he is the man, and I am so blessed and fortunate to be able to have a match with him coming up in a few months, and I am so excited, looking forward to that in ICW up in Chattanooga. He is kind of like the American Onita. He just pushes the envelope, and just his body of work is impressive. I would say, like, when it comes to American deathmatch wrestlers, he's easily on the Mount Rushmore. I have nothing but just complete respect for that man.
Gotcha. So you said that you've pretty much been a lifelong fan of this stuff. What would you say is your earliest wrestling related memory?
Man, let's see. Like, I was pretty casual about it until I was about a teenager, and I think when I was a teenager, that's when it really sunk its teeth into me, and I got obsessed. But I can just remember my earliest memory. I remember my dad randomly flipping through channels. He stopped on WCW for a second, and I remember just seeing Hulk Hogan and Sting, and I remember thinking Sting looked so cool. And just kids at school would talk about it, and I didn't really watch it. And then I had some cousins that watched it, and so I remember watching it at some of my cousins' houses and thinking it was really cool. My cousin had Ready to Rumble. I remember, like, in the early 2000s, and that was
yeah.
that was probably one of my first real introductions to wrestling. And then, like, they played the video games, and I was like, oh, this is like comic books or Pokemon or superheroes or whatever, or rock and roll. It's just that larger than reality type of entertainment that I've always liked on everything else when I was a kid. So yeah, I dug it.
Gotcha. So I'm guessing, since you were talking about Sting and Hogan, you were talking about Crow Sting and not Surfer Sting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think Surfer Sting's rad too, but obviously
Yeah.
I prefer the darker wrestling.
Crow Sting was just awesome. I mean,
yeah, when you're like you're just a little kid and you see Sting, you're like, that's the coolest man that's ever lived. So
yeah.
really rad. And it's cool because, like, being a filmmaker, I got to work with Sting in a music video. Like, he got to be in a music video for this band called Islander for a song called Crazy Crazy World, where he was dressed up in full character, had the face paint, like his tights and everything on. And we filmed these 2 locations, and we had to drive with that. And I was like, I want to get some footage of Sting driving. So we're just driving through Texas. I'm in the passenger seat of his truck. Sting is just driving through Texas in full gimmick, and people are just like driving, like, wait, that's Sting driving the car? Because he's like a pretty recognizable guy, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Even if you don't follow wrestling, you've seen Sting. You know what Sting is, you know?
Yeah.
So that was cool. And he's awesome. He's such a great person. And I've gotten to work with him just in music videos and just through Islander, and then a little bit like at AEW. So he's just awesome.
Gotcha. Yeah, based on the kind of deep dive, the Nathan Mowery deep dive I've done the last couple of days, I'm seeing a lot of different things in you. I see Bray Wyatt, I see Rob Zombie, I see Charles Manson. um,
Yeah.
you know, uh, and they're all cool and noticeable influences, you know, and I think you what you're doing is honoring all of those, and I'm sure there are other influences as well.
For sure.
But so, what does your family think of all this?
um, it's one of those things where they're supportive of it because they see how it's just been a really healthy creative outlet for me. It's
Hmm.
I mean, being a filmmaker, I mean, being a creative is just my whole. This is what I do, from film, and then I kind of just needed like something a little bit more aggressive, more of an aggressive form of art. And my parents came to that Rumble Jack, which was what is like a Royal Rumble thing that Southern Honor does, and that was my first match, as I was saying, in 2021. But that was the first and only match my parents ever came to of mine because like, actually, no, I did the Rumble Jack, and then after the Rumble Jack, I had a singles match against Tank, and uh, and I remember Tank, who is just this Southern hardcore deathmatch legend, and I remember this was like my second singles match, and I remember just being like, "Yo, Tank is like a gnarly guy. This is a legit badass dude, and I cannot mess this up." And I remember just being so in my head, and I remember asking Tank, I was like, "All right, sir, what do you want to do out there?" He just listen to me. And I'm like, oh man, we have nothing planned. So I remember Rev Dan Wilson, who we were in a group called Coven of the Goats. So now Tank and Rev Dan were all like a unit, but this is like my first time really interacting with these guys. And I was very intimidated. And Dan looks at me, he's like, "You're going to get color out there, right? You're not going to let us down. I know you're not going to pussyfoot around this." And I'm like, "Yes, sir, I'm going to go for it." And I remember when it came time to bleed, I just went for it, and I was just gushing. And then there's like Tank gets the barbecue skewers and starts driving them into my head, gets a sickle and starts ripping my forehead with the sickle. And then my mom, my poor mom, is just in the crowd, just mortified, and I just feel so bad. And then my mom comes to the back afterwards, where she has this demeanor of like half proud and half just mortified that she just watched her son get mutilated. And my dad's in the background being like, "Man, the boys from work are gonna think this is cool, you know?" And I have this Polaroid of me and my mom. It's on my refrigerator, and it's just me with my hand on her shoulder, just trying to like reassure her that I'm okay, and her just being like, just kind of shocked about it all, and I'm just gushed in blood, just covered. So yeah, that was the only one she came to. I just think it's kind of hard for a mom to watch her son, just get being very violent types of
Yeah,
matches, which is predominantly what I do.
right, right. I saw your picture on Instagram of the laceration recently. How did that happen? That was gnarly.
It is, man. It's still aggravating me a little bit, but it wasn't even on anything like that crazy as far as I'm concerned. But I've done mousetraps in like all of my matches. Mousetraps were like nothing to me. I'm like just seeing if there's a mousetrap here. I was gonna put my hand in one, but doesn't look like there is. But mousetraps, I've been a big fan of it. Mousetrap bats, mousetrap doors, mousetrap boards, mousetraps, whatever. You can clip them on your tongue, your fingers. Like I have mastered like mousetraps, and I just know how to work with them. But until one fateful night, about 9-10 days ago, we were at DWA. It was me and Jameson Shook, and basically the go home was Brainbuster through a chair, which done that spot a billion times. Land on mousetraps, done that a lot, but I never combined the two. So we taped a bunch of mousetraps onto like the seat of a chair, and so when he went up and brainbusted me, just a little bit of that metal caught my back and just ripped it all the way open, and it was
Mm,
just pretty rough. And it was I probably should have got stitches, a normal person would, but I just super glued it. I just glued it shut, cleaned it up real good, and just taped it shut. And it's healing fine. My fiance's father works in the medical field, so sometimes I'll just send him videos or pictures of what's going on. Me being a dumbass, and thank God he
well,
thinks it's cool and not stupid. But he was like, "Yeah, it's healing."
well, uh, keep it clean, dude. You don't want to get it infected. I was a paramedic for a number of years, so I mean,
Yeah, and I've kept it clean. So like I'm like to the popular contrary to popular belief, I'm not that big of an idiot. The badassery and dumbassery is a thin line I like to skate, but don't
right.
worry, I've been taking care of it.
Actually, Jameson Shook's been on the show previously.
Oh, heck yeah, I love
Yeah,
Shook. He's rad.
he's a good dude.
He's awesome, and he's got Hot to Go coming up this Friday for anybody out there that's in the Chattanooga area. Go support Jameson Shook and go to Hot to Go. Sorry.
Yep. I actually went to college up in the Chattanooga area. So when he was on, we were talking about places in Chattanooga, and it was like old home week.
Oh,
So
that's awesome, man. I grew up like right outside of there. I grew up in like Polk County, Tennessee, if you know where that's at.
oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I grew up there, but then I moved to Atlanta when I was like 19. So I've been here for a hot minute. But yeah, I'm very familiar with the 423. Got tattooed on my arm right there in these dice. So it's my home as
Nice,
well.
nice. So away from wrestling, and I mean, I know you've got filmmaking and other stuff, but what are some of your other hobbies and interests?
Oh man. Well, I keep a pretty busy schedule, so I don't have a lot of free time to do a lot of stuff. But typically, my week is just working on filmmaking. I work on a lot of documentaries, and sometimes, like when I have free time, I just like to kind of make my own like little videos because I just have documented my whole life. So I'm just sitting on all these clips of stuff that I want to tell stories of. So I'll edit fun little videos, or I'll just hang out with my fiance, and we'll just kind of keep a chill night. We don't go out too much, but we just kind of. I'm more of an introverted kind of person, so when I have free time, I'm kind of just in my office here, work piddling on little projects, listening to music. Me and my fiance love listening to old records and stuff, and just hanging out at the house. So I'm but we travel a lot, and then deathmatch wrestling and stunts and filmmaking keeps our life pretty exciting. That when we get a moment to breathe, we kind of just take advantage of it and just sit. So we live a pretty fast-paced life, so it's good to have these moments of just breathing.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Speed round. Joe Gacy.
I don't know too much about him other than he was in CZW for a little bit, and he had some of
Mhm.
the. And obviously, I'm a big fan of anybody that has kind of like that cult kind of feeling or character, the darker thing.
Yeah.
So I've always really liked what I've seen of him. I don't know enough of his body work. I know he's rad, and I feel like I would dig him because he checks all the boxes for what I like in wrestling. So yeah, he's good. He was in CZW. Now he's in NXT. Anybody that can cross over from that world of just ultra violent death matches on the independents and makes it to something like WWE, definitely has my respect. So don't know much about him, but he has my respect, and I think his character is cool.
Absolutely. So, who are some of your favorite filmmakers?
Ooh, that's good. I think the first one that pops into my head is Spike Jones. Like I really liked his stuff, and I think kind of influenced me to pursue it in a weird way, because not only does Spike Jones did movies like Her or Where the Wild Things Are, but he also was a producer of Jackass, and he did a lot of music videos and a lot of skateboarding music videos or skateboarding videos. He did the skateboarding video called Yeah Right, which was like a cult classic skateboarding movie that I have on DVD that I'll watch every now and again. And I think there was something about seeing somebody that came from the alternative world of skateboarding and music videos and like the punk scene and all that kind of stuff, and him being an actual like an Academy Award winning artist kind of made me feel like, whoa, this is like tangible. I could actually be a filmmaker. This guy kind of came from somewhat of the same kind of scene and area and like-mindedness, and he was able to make a career. And I remember when I was deciding what I wanted to do, because I worked in a bunch of just random factories in Tennessee, and it just wasn't what I wanted out of life. And I remember watching a video about Spike Jones, and that really inspired me. So big on him. So yeah, like him a lot. I like a lot. I like Ari Aster. Like he's like kind of a newer director doing like Hereditary and Midsummer and um, you know, those kind of movies. I like I mean obviously I like Quentin Tarantino because he is very violent and over the top. And so, you know, I mean that's like the stock answer. I like Sean Baker, who's been doing a lot of really cool movies, like Anora, which just won Best Picture. And then like he has a movie called The Florida Project that's really good. So just a lot of really rad stuff. I'm trying to think of other directors. I'm looking at my DVD collection in the corner of my eye to see what I got going over here. I mentioned. Obviously, Buster Keaton is a huge influence on me. That's I'm not too big into old Hollywood, but I really like Buster Keaton because his stunts still hold up today. He's crazier than a lot of people. I don't know if you or anybody listening is familiar with Buster Keaton, but that is worth the YouTube rabbit hole. Go watch some Buster Keaton old movies. There's a 19-minute movie called Cops by Buster Keaton. It was made 100 years ago, and it's a silent movie with stunts, and it just still lands so good. So highly recommend that for anybody that wants to watch a Buster Keaton movie. Huge Buster Keaton mark.
Very cool. Very cool. So, so you're presently, you said, in Marietta, Georgia. What is your favorite thing about Marietta?
Man, it's cool because it's like you're 20 minutes away from the city. If you want to get anything in Atlanta, you're not that far of a drive. You're close to the Atlanta, 30 minutes from the Atlanta airport, and that's like the busiest airport. There's direct flights to anywhere you could think of. I love. I'm Southern. I grew up in the South. I love the South. I don't ever plan on leaving the South. It's very much part of my DNA. Marietta just made sense. It's a halfway point between where I grew up and well, I guess it's a halfway point, but it's like 2 hours from where I grew up, and then close to Atlanta. It just like seemed like the right spot for me. And with DDP Yoga and Dallas being in Smyrna, Georgia, I'm like 10 minutes from work. So just for everything that I'm doing, and the wrestling scene in Georgia is pretty good. There's a lot of wrestling out here, and you're not that far of a drive for any crazy city. If you want to go up to Nashville, it's 4 hours. You want to go to Savannah, it's 4 hours. If you want to go down to anywhere in Florida, it's not that bad of a drive. So it's just makes sense to be here, and it's rural enough to where you're kind of like, out of, you don't hear constant cars and stuff, but close enough to where
Right.
you be in the mess if you want to be. So just this,
Right.
it's the just right porridge, I think.
Absolutely. So, they say that the best wrestling persona is essentially yourself kind of turned up to 11. So, tell us about in-ring Nathan. Tell us about the Killbilly and kind of compare and contrast him with everyday you.
I think, well, if you know Nathan Mowery, like the person, the filmmaker, the whatever, I'm a pretty laid back guy. I'm easy to approach. I'm hard to offend. I have pretty thick skin, you know. Um, but and you can like I'm super approachable. Literally anybody can walk up to me. I'm really easy to get along with. But I think the similarities between the Killbilly Nathan Mowery and just regular old Nathan Mowery is that we both have this desire for just insanity. I'm just drawn to chaos. I love dangerous situations. I love the high of survival, like doing something dangerous, then wiggling your fingers and toes and realize you're not dead. It's probably not a healthy thing, but it's something that I get a high off of, and I love that feeling. I've always had it since I was a teenager. That's why I've perpetually put myself in dangerous situations, and this is why this art form kind of works for me. But I think the Killbilly is definitely me with the volume turned up. He's a very aggressive Southern man, little bit dark, kind of like working through, struggling with the darkness, his own humanity, his own spirituality, this inner turmoil that's inside of him. And it's my way of taking that pain and experience and just different hard emotions and being able to express it. And I think that is the most effective way I've been able to express myself artistically is through creating the Killbilly, because it's able to function and feel all these harder emotions that are within me as a real man. So I think just being a crazy Southern man is something that connects the two versions of Nathan Mowery. And yeah, like I said, I just enjoy doing crazy shit, just being a crazy Southern man.
Gotcha. Speed round. Nick Gage.
Go, dude. He's the man. There's like if people were able to like capture Nick Gage in the bottle, like that energy. If you go watch any clip of Nick Gage and see him come out, the crowd is just like a big mosh pit. They get hyped up. It's hard not to just feel something. I think every wrestling fan, whether you're a fan of bloody death matches or not. I think every wrestling fan owes it to themselves to see Nick Gage live, especially like now that he's probably not going to be around that much longer because he's done so many crazy things. He's accomplished so much, but I think that is the guy. How like 20 years ago, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack was the gateway drug to all things death match. I feel like Nick Gage is that modern version of that, where people will see Nick Gage, they'll see some clips from GCW, or they'll see the one time he wrestled Jericho in AEW, and be like, "Oh, I'm going to learn more about this crazy character," or the Dark Side of the Ring episode, and then that will take you to. Then you'll expand onto all these other types of wrestlers. So I think he is the epitome of what deathmatch wrestling is. Yeah, I have nothing but respect for him. He's like the dream match for me if I could ever get a Nick Gage match. Because I was like, when I wanted to quit during COVID, my fiance got that cameo, and I was just like,
Yeah.
man, maybe one day. Because I'm starting to like rise in the ranks as he's starting to like, you know, starting to wind down a little bit. But I'm just like, man, if I can get in there with Nick Cage, I'd go so crazy. But he's the man. I love and respect Nick Cage, what he's done for wrestling, what he's done for deathmatch wrestling, and he's provided so many just so cool moments and matches. So big Nick Cage fan, obviously. It's hard not to be if you're a deathmatch guy.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So, you kind of told us about your first match. Now, if you can narrow it down, tell us about your favorite match that you've been a part of.
Hmm. It's hard to pick, but probably the match I had with Hoodfoot at ICW in Chattanooga back in January. Just because that was like I was on the main ICW show and it was against Hoodfoot, and Hoodfoot is the longest reigning American Deathmatch champion. I knew a lot of people were going to be watching. I knew this was my opportunity to show out, and this could be a star-making performance. You know, I needed to really go for it, and I did. And I mean, I bled buckets. I got ripped open. I mean, that match might have took a few years off my life. But I am really proud of that one. It was just grotesquely violent. That whole match is up on my YouTube. I had some of my friends come out who were filmmakers, and they filmed it on their like cinema cameras. So you could go watch it on ICW, like on IWTV. Go support ICW No Holds Barred, and also just go to my YouTube because if you type in Nathan Mowery versus Hoodfoot, it'll show up, and it's worth the watch because it is just grotesquely violent, and I lost so much blood that I was like cold for a few days after, and it was just gross and violent, and I loved it. So, and it got a lot of praise, and so I think after that match, my bookings picked up a lot. And now I'm wrestling, outside of the Southeast. So now I'm going to be in Detroit next weekend, and then Chicago the day after, and then I got Las Vegas coming up for Mania weekend. Got a few bookings out there, so I think that Hoodfoot match kind of put me on the map as far as the deathmatch fan base goes. So I think that was and I think it was just my gnarliest match I've done. So if people were like, "Oh, give me one match to know who Nathan Mowery is," that's the one to watch.
Got you. So, tell us about Blood and Honey.
So, yeah, heck yeah. So Blood and Honey is like it's funny because like to do death matches, especially if you're in the South, and you could even argue that deathmatch wrestling started in the South. Nita says that deathmatch wrestling started in Tennessee. It started in Memphis. It started in the Tupelo concession stand brawl back in the 70s. But in modern times, there's not a lot of deathmatch going on here in the South. There's like one company, TPW, up in Tennessee, and then there's like Deep South, but that's whatever. And then it's like like I needed something, especially in the Georgia or the Atlanta area. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm good at production. That's what I do for a living. I'm a pretty connected guy. And one of my friends, their name is Broadway, and they work at this place called Monk's Meadery there in Atlanta. And Broadway was hit me up. It's like, hey, we're kind of like showcasing some different kind of art show almost kind of things of different alternative kind of things here in Atlanta. And we were curious. We see that you do this thing called deathmatch. If you would want to put a deathmatch show here at our meadery, we'll give you a little bit of money. You can put together a card, and we can kind of work from it there. And so last year I did 3 Blood and Honey shows, and just kind of wanted to bring a violent alternative to the Georgia wrestling scene, because there's a lot of shows in Georgia, a lot of great shows, a lot of great wrestlers, but just that niche of hardcore wrestling was kind of lacking in our scene. So I was like, okay, well, I see this gap in the market, and I feel like there is an audience for it here in the South. So I'm going to kind of make something for that audience. And yeah, we ran 3 shows, did pretty good, and I actually profited, on my last show. When you do your first few shows, you're not going to, didn't profit a lot, but I did profit. So now I'm like, okay, there is something that could be created here. So I try to tell some stories, shoot some cool, videos, and we're going to be back. So this is probably the first time I've said it outside of the people involved, but let me make sure I say this date right, because this is the first time I've announced this publicly here. There we go, a little exclusive, huh? So on June,
yeah, I got the scoop
right here. So on June 29th, we're coming back. Blood and Honey is going to be at Monk's Meadery again, and I am working on the card currently. But yeah, follow the Blood and Honey Instagram page to stay up to date. I got some pretty lofty, chaotic ideas going around in this sick little head of mine, because I realize that I'm not just the only person that just loves the craziness and the chaos, the violence, the absurdity and everything, but there's a whole community of people who are like-minded. So I'm getting all these little freaks together, and we're going to put on a really entertaining night for you guys. So come check it out.
Awesome. So, and I know everybody has them, but what is your biggest in-ring pet peeve?
That's good.
I'm glad you're enjoying my questions.
Yeah, some of these are like, oh man, I haven't thought about this. These are good questions for sure. Pet
Thank
peeve.
you.
I think. Oh, I know. When people don't hit you. I mean, I personally like getting hit hard, but like if you're like not touching me, or you're especially with chops, if someone gives me just a chop, it bums me out. Like I'm a tough cookie. Hit me hard. I want that. I want the violence. So I just don't like it. Like, I mean, you could hit people safe, and you could absolutely smoke somebody with it. Be cool, but like, come on, like, don't, like, this is not checkers, man. This is wrestling. This is deathmatch wrestling. Make it a little bit of violent. Be a little aggressive. I think the thing that pisses me off, or I think annoys me the most, is when people are not aggressive, or they just don't hit hard. But that's just me. That's just how I feel about it. I feel like wrestling should be a little aggressive. So if people try to, like, be a wuss about it, it just kind of annoys me. And also just doing like deathmatch can easily just turn into just something stupid. So it's like when people are just not trying to tell a story, when there's no selling or babyface heel dynamics or whatever, like I just don't care. Like there's got to be a story, a point, a reason why this is happening. Like I just don't like deathmatch that doesn't have substance to some degree. I mean, it's fun to watch chaos, and sometimes I've definitely leaned into senseless violence before, but I feel like there's got to be a motive. So I think for me, just I love violence, and I love there being a motive and a story to make that violence make sense. Personally, that just makes sense. And if you're gonna chop me, bring it, because if you hit me with a weak chop, I'll put you in the corner, and I'm gonna like make you regret it.
Make you wish you hadn't.
Yeah, yeah. Don't be a wuss. If you're wrestling me, you can't be a wuss, dude, because that's gonna. I tell people like especially people who are a little bit timid. I'm just like, all right, you have to hit me with this, and you're gonna have to hit me really hard. And if you don't hit me really hard with it, I'm gonna be really mad at you. And another point of this thing, I know I'm kind of rambling on this point now that I'm starting to think of other things that are making me mad, but when people want to do deathmatch for clout, when people hit me up, they're like, hey, I want to do a deathmatch with you, but don't really cut me. I don't want gusset plates on my head. And I'm just like, no, if you're going to do a deathmatch, you're stepping up. I'm not going to water what I would do down. Like, you're not going to just try to look cool. Like, if you want to be violent, then be violent, because you're going to earn it if you want to have a death match under your belt, especially when it comes to me, because I wanted to make the art good. I don't want to like water it down because someone wants to look cool for Instagram.
So don't do the David Arquette.
Yeah, I mean, well, I get his motive, so it made sense. There was a motive and there was a story. So I respect David Arquette for going in there, especially with Nick Gage, dude. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's people, they're just random people who will be like, yeah, I just don't want to bleed in the death match. And I was like, then you don't want to do a death match, man. Like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But that's just how I feel about it personally. To each their own. But that's just my take.
Gotcha. Speed round. John Moxley.
Dude, he's rad. He's kind of a polarizing figure for a lot of people in wrestling. A lot of people don't like him. A lot of people really like him. And I'm obviously, if you could imagine, of course, I'm going to be on the side of really digging John Moxley. But I like his character, his look, his vibe, the way he does promos. Like, he can do regular matches. But, on one hand, a lot of people like more like the video game style, the PWG style, the constant near falls and the flips and the dives. And that's cool. There's a lot of people who like it. And I think that style is cool. That just doesn't speak to me as a wrestling fan. I like the brutality. I like the Bruiser Brody types. I love like the Stan Hansen types. I like just the kind of dudes that you would be like, this guy, if I ran into him in a dark alley, he would absolutely like ruin my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if John Moxley try to rob me on the street, I'd be like, yo. So that's like, there's other wrestlers that I don't have that feeling towards. And so that's the kind of thing I like. I was talking to Buff Bagwell about it a while back. He was around at DDP Yoga a lot. And he was saying that for him, wrestlers should look like superheroes. And it bums him out that people are not like jacked like he used to be back in the day. But for me, what I get out of it, like my trainer, Jimmy Yang, he loves action movies and kung fu and stuff like that. So that's what he likes out of wrestling. Me, like, I don't want to be Bruce Lee. I don't want to be Superman. I'd rather be Art the Clown. I'd rather be Leatherface. I'd rather be Freddy Krueger. I want to be the Devil's Rejects or a Rob Zombie movie. That's what speaks to me. So that's kind of what I personally want. Again, like this is the style that I like. And not everyone's going to like it. And that's cool too. And I think that's what makes it more special is when a lot of people don't dig what you do. But I also kind of like what we were saying before we even started, that you have at least it might not be your cup of tea, which it definitely is not going to be for a lot of people. But as long as you can respect people, let them do their,
for sure.
Let them play their song the way they want to play their song. I'm not going to let anyone's yum, make anyone feel bad about their creative process and how they want to present their art to the world. So that's just how I like it. I know I rambled again, but that's that's how I feel about it.
So, I can tell by, like I said, the Nathan Mowery deep dive that you're good at both. But if you could only be one, would you rather be great in the ring or great on the mic?
That's hard because it's like I put a lot of work into learn, like obviously both are equally important, I think. But it's one of those things where there's like some wrestlers that are just so good, but they can't say a string of sentences together to save their lives. But I don't know, maybe I'd be better at talking because I think that's because if you can't, I don't know, maybe I should wrestle because I don't know, because I could always be like somebody's manager and I could just tell them on a microphone and be really good at doing that. But I don't know. I've always been intrigued by the people who can cut really good promos and just be engaging as a character. It's kind of hard to pick because they're both very important aspects of being a wrestler. I tend to emphasize promos and character. That's what I want to lean towards. But saying that I wouldn't want to be good at wrestling would be really weird since I am, a wrestler, and it kind of comes in handy when you're, wrestling. So
yeah,
I don't know. So if I have to pick one, I guess I'd go with promo.
Got you. So do you have an all-time favorite match as a fan? A match that you could have watched it a million times and it just never gets old and there's always some new little nugget you can pull from it?
There's a few matches like that. but I think my go-to answer is Samoa Joe versus Necro Butcher. Like, I don't know if you've seen that match.
Actually, it was Jameson Shook that turned me on to that match.
Oh yeah,
He told me you've got to watch it. So the day after he was on the show, I sat down and watched it, and I was like, my God, that is insanely violent, but a good story.
yeah, and there's like this whole video breakdown about the whole intrigue and backstory and build to why this match was crazy, and it's like that match is like I love some like 2005 Samoa Joe is probably the best wrestler ever. Like if I had a list of my top 5 favorite matches, 2005 Samoa Joe was on there multiple times. So you got like my 3 favorite matches to watch all involve 2005 Samoa Joe. So you got Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi in Ring of Honor. Also great. Go look that up if you guys haven't. Secondly, Necro Butcher versus Samoa Joe. That's probably my favorite match of all time because of the brutality and the realism and the drama and just 2 tough guys just beating the hell out of each other. And it's so sick. And then, of course, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, Unbreakable 3-way in TNA in 2005. I think as far like that, that's a perfect wrestling match. I could never get sick of watching that. So I'd say those are my 3 favorites that I go back and watch a lot. So yeah, shout out to 2005 Samoa Joe. Ruled.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you had mentioned that Nick Gage would be a dream opponent for you on the deathmatch side of things. Who would be and this can be present day or past, who would be a dream opponent for you in a non-deathmatch setting?
Just like a regular, like traditional wrestling match.
Yeah.
What's a good question? Probably my heart wants to tell me 2005 Samoa Joe again, but try to go with a different answer. Because I like a lot of the old like Memphis stuff and a lot of early TNA stuff. I really dig. Man, it's so hard to pick, man. God, I'm gonna as soon as this is over, I'm gonna have like a million. Like, I guess I'll have to go with 2005 Samoa Joe, or maybe it'd be cool to wrestle Jimmy Wang Gang in 2005. Now that he's like my trainer, it'd been really cool to wrestle him back there. And there's a bunch of people. I think I could have got maybe wrestle Brock Lesnar. I feel like I can definitely take a good ass whooping from somebody like Brock Lesnar. That'd be fun. It would be a death match in a different way. It would just be,
Yeah.
it'd be like wrestling a polar bear getting eaten alive. It's just like I feel like that would fulfill my need to do something insane. So probably someone like Brock Lesnar. I feel like I'm pretty good at getting beat up. So so there's multiple answers. I'm sure I'll think of a better answer. And the Hardys. Oh, the Hardys and Edge and Christian. That was another thing that got me super into it. But they can kind of lean into the more extreme style too. So I don't know. Probably
Right.
one of those guys.
Gotcha. So, what is your favorite move? What is something that you just really enjoy doing?
It's a really random move, but it's almost in every single match that I do. When I started training with Jimmy Yang 2 years ago, Buff Bagwell was staying at DDP's house, and so he'd come in on a few training sessions and everything and show us a few things. And he showed me how to do his swinging neck breaker he did like all the time, where it's literally kick to the gut, hit the rope, spinning neck breaker. And I just love that move. I work it into every move. I love hitting it. I like the way it looks. It's just a nice wrestling move. But yeah, that's my favorite move to hit. It's just the spinning neck breaker that Buff taught me how to do, and it's like in everything. I just love it. It's not a finish. It's not like a big high spot. It's just a really cool, reliable move that I really dig and pull out all the time.
Got you. Speed round. Sami Callihan.
Yeah. Also a really rad dude. There's this Cage of Death match in CZW. It's Sami Callihan versus Danny Havoc. That's another one that's really good to work up to look up. He man, because he's done he's kind of like a John Moxley in a way too, where he can just do everything. Where he's good at just regular wrestling, and good on the mics, good at just cool character, great ideas. So people like Sammy Callahan and John Moxley, that's the kind of people that I strive to be more like, because I feel like they got more mileage and creativity out of it than people who are just, burning the candles at both ends and just killing themselves essentially. So, but Sammy Callahan, man, he's got like most people kind of know him from, TNA or NXT, but if you look at some of his indie stuff,
Oh yeah.
definitely when it comes to the Cage of Death with Danny Havoc, that's one to pull up. Next time you're just like, you know what, I'm curious about this deathmatch thing. I need to go do a little dabbling. Yeah, look up Danny Havoc and Sammy Callahan. It's a good one. So he's the man. Love him. I've watched a lot of his matches. I've taken a lot of influence from Sammy Callahan. He kind of does the style that I, strive towards, which is a good mix of wrestling and, violent shenanigans.
Gotcha. So, this is kind of a funny question. What hurts right now? Or should I better ask what doesn't hurt?
I mean, my back right now, or not even my back, but like just my cut that I have on my shoulder back there.
Oh, yeah.
That, if you saw on my Instagram, it's not the best
Yeah.
looking cut. Definitely should have got stitches, but it is what it is. I'm keeping it clean though, so we're good. It's healing well, so you're great. Don't worry, we're
Yeah.
all right. But just healing like a cut like that's just kind of annoying because it's like it's also like close to my armpit, so it's just like here, like right here and everything. So it's just like I feel it when I move my arm. It's just a pain. But the cool thing about when you're a deathmatch wrestler and you're probably worse on your back than most other people you interact with on a daily basis, the good thing is I also work at DDP Yoga. So I do a lot of DDP Yoga before and after matches. I don't understand how people can't do DDP Yoga like after matches because it's just been so ingrained in my head. I got even though it's not a full workout or anything, I got to do a little bit of stretch before and afterwards. Because I just know all the stretches and all the positions in DDP yoga. So it's like, oh, my lower back hurts. Well, I know exactly what I can do for the next 10, 15 minutes to work out that pain. So it's weird because I'm like probably rougher on my back than most people, but also like better with my back than most people. So I feel like it gets me in this weird, neutral spot.
Gotcha. Well, that's actually a perfect segue into the next question, and that is, how did the DDP Yoga Association come about? How did you end up working for DDP?
So I've been a filmmaker my entire life. I've always been making videos with my friends ever since I was a little kid. Like I have one of my friends who's visiting me now. He works in wrestling. He works for like TNA and he does a bunch of cool stuff. But when we were kids, like when we were 5 and 6 years old, we would just make little skits with our brothers, like little videos. And as we got older, we got more cameras and our ideas got a little bit bigger. And then we just never stopped. It was just how we kind of played as we were kids. And then I had a bunch of jobs that didn't really fulfill me. And I was just kind of getting so depressed. And I was just like, man, I got to just like I have this philosophy and it's kind of a mantra. I believe that there's two kinds of people in the world. There's the oh wells and there's the what ifs. And you're going to default to one or the other. When you get to the end of your life, you're going to be like, what if I became a deathmatch wrestler? What if I became a filmmaker? What if I did this or I took this chance or I asked this person out or I went to this country or whatever? Eventually, you're going to have to sit at the end of your life and think about missed opportunity. For me, I'd much rather be an oh well guy, which is, hey, I'm going to have this match. Sure, I got a giant rip in my back because of it, but I'd much rather just say, oh, well, and fail and fall flat on my face at chasing a dream or a pursuit that I deem valuable as opposed to just regretting it at the end of my life. So I just try to take all the opportunities I want. So I was like, whatever. I want to move to Atlanta. I moved in with this guy named Isaac Dietz. He was a filmmaker that I looked up to, and he kind of helped me by teaching me a lot of stuff, giving me his extra video work, and then kind of taught me how to make it a business. And then for about 2 years, I was doing little freelance stuff, barely scraping by on ramen and McDonald's. And then one day, one of my roommates that lived at this house with Isaac found a Craigslist ad. DDP was looking for like an editor, and they hit me up one day. I was like, "Hey, are you still a filmmaker?" "Yes." "Are you still a wrestling fan?" Yes. Okay. Well, Diamond Dallas Page is looking for somebody to work for DDP Yoga, make some workout videos, and he also moved Jake Roberts and Scott Hall into their house, and he's trying to help them get a little bit better. We kind of want to do a documentary and kind of film that process along with making, the dailies and all the stuff with Dallas promos, workout workshops, autograph signing, all of his stuff. He's a very busy man. And so I was like blown away. And I was like 20, 21 at the time. This was 2013. And I
Hmm.
remember going to Dallas's house for the interview and just freaking out because I'm a huge wrestling fan. I'm not just some camera guy that's just like whatever. We were knocking on
Right.
Dallas's front door and like Scott Hall opening up. He's like, "Hey, welcome on in." I'm like, "Yeah, this is crazy." I had to do his action. And then I remember Jake, and Jake was in a pretty rough spot at this given period of time, and he was just full of a lot of anger. And I remember being like, "Hey, Jake, my name is Nathan. I'm going to be working here." And then I remember him just being like, "F off, kid. Your haircut's pissing me off." And I remember just being like laughing, thinking that he was just messing around. But then I was like, "Oh, he genuinely is like upset at my haircut," and he was just really mad. And he brought it up several times. And then like, and then Jake ended up being Jake is so awesome. Jake and Scott were both Jake like is such a cool person. Like, man, we bonded a lot. Same with Scott. Same with Dallas. Just through that whole experience. I have this tattoo in my arm. It's of a snake going through a razor blade with a diamond in its mouth. So that represented the time of working with Jake, Scott, and Dallas because it went
Yeah.
from because I was like a sheltered homeschool kid too, to a certain degree. So I never had very much direct interaction with addiction, and that was a weird period of time because it was like, oh, I'm not only or am I is this humanizing my action figures I grew up with, but this is like a really beautiful tale and story of human triumph of people beating those demons. So it just kind of like really impacted me, especially as a young man, like learning about the real world for the first time. So
Hmm.
and
Um,
it's crazy.
did you have any involvement with the making of the resurrection of Jake the Snake?
Yes, yep. I helped shoot it and I helped edit a lot of it. I'm in it.
That was a wonderful documentary.
Oh yeah, thank you. It was Steve Yu, who's our boss at DDP Yoga. He's kind of like the guy that can make any of Dallas's ideas kind of come into life. Like Dallas is a big idea guy. Steve is the guy who can execute those crazy ideas, and he's just a genius filmmaker. And I've learned so much from him. And there was a crew like Dylan Freimeyer, who is still with DDP Yoga to this day with me. We're both he was an editor on that. Great storyteller in wrestling. He also runs Southern Honor Wrestling. Just a great storyteller in general. So having him help edit was great. And we had a few other people that worked on it as well. But we're like all in the movie, so you can see all clean cut, scared Nathan in that. I have an interview in it as well. So you can go back and watch it. Oh man, that dog! I guess that dog doesn't like that documentary. I thought.
Um, no, my wife's bringing the dogs out through the basement. That's where my little recording area is. So,
Yeah, yeah. Heck yeah.
um, so, um, so what is your take on the role that social media is playing as a promotional tool in wrestling, specifically indie wrestling?
I think it's essential. I wish, like, on one hand, I kind of hate social media because it just brings the worst out of people, and it's just like it's just predominantly negative, especially when you're like, a deathmatch, dude. People, I don't know if you know this, a lot of people on the internet do not like deathmatch wrestling, and they do not hesitate to let you know. Like every day, it's like, I'll laugh for a hot dog and a handshake. It's like, man, you just copy paste that every single day. So it's just on that regard, it's just annoying, but it's just like the same joke over and over. But it's also just a great, especially if you know how to use it properly. Like it's just unfortunately an essential part of today in marketing and advertising. So it's just going to be way easier to get people to come see your show if you post about it crazy on social media as opposed to taking out like a radio ad or something. It's just that's just the most effective way of getting people to your show. So I think it's very good. And also it's just because it's 2025 you can also tell stories through social media. You can like create feuds and whatever, and like that could be its own. Like social media can be its own theater if you use it right. So there's definitely good ways of using it, and there's definitely horrible ways of using it. So that's just I try to like use it to kind of promote what it is I'm doing, whether it be my music videos or for the most part wrestling on my main page. So yeah, I think it's pretty needed, despite its negativity it can bring.
Gotcha. Speed round. Sabu.
Oh yeah, dude, Sabu is awesome. I remember just being like, I remember being a kid, because he was like one of the first extreme wrestlers you come across when you're first getting into it. When you see Mick Foley, pretty much the second wrestler you see after him, besides Terry Funk, is going to be like Sabu. And so huge fan of Sabu. And I think when I saw his barbed wire match with Abyss before I saw his barbed wire match with Terry Funk. Both are the best like barbed wire matches like ever, in my opinion. So I was more familiar with him in early TNA as opposed, and then went back to watch all his ECW and FMW and everything else. But Sabu's a legend, and I think like when he would do like the triple moonsault, and sometimes he would miss, or sometimes he would like slip or whatever. I think it kind of added to just the unpredictability and the insanity of who Sabu was. He is just him breaking tables, even if like he had a table in a match and he didn't break it, he would just throw himself through it. Like he's just an unpredictable maniac. And when you're a teenager, he used to do these matches where he would purposely get himself disqualified because he was just crazy and uncontrollable. So just a really cool character. Some of the best hardcore matches you'll ever see. And yeah, Sabu rules. And if you're a fan of hardcore wrestling, Sabu is also got to be up there in that Mount Rushmore, man. It's just, yeah, big Sabu guy. I just have this.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll just randomly point at the sky, be Sabu.
Oh yeah,
We love
absolutely.
Sabu in this household.
So, knowing everything you know at this point in your life, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Like in wrestling, or just like in general?
Just in general.
I think stop worrying about what people think about you. I think that holds a lot of people back from doing what they really want in life. They're trying to meet expectations that other people have placed on their own lives. And I think I fell into that too much in my early 20s, where I was just trying to people please, where I was just trying to make people happy. And I was neglecting what it was that I wanted out of life, or how I wanted to be a creative, or how I wanted to express myself, or talk or think, or whatever the case may be. I let others kind of dictate that. And I was able to shake that off, as I got a little bit older in my later 20s, because that was a pretty big issue for me. And once I kind of let that go, I just felt so free. So I'd probably be like, I would tell my younger self, stop caring so much about what other people think. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Be good to people and do what it is that you want out of this life, because you only get so many laps around this sun, so make it count.
Absolutely. So, do you have any pre-show traditions? Any things that you try to do consistently before you go through the curtain?
I just scream into the void. No, I think there's I just panic. What am I doing? No, I always tell people like before it happens, especially if I'm knowing it's a very violent match. Like it feels like you're going up on a roller coaster, and right before you get to that drop, you just get stuck there, and you're there for hours until your match happens. I'll stretch a little bit. I'll just kind of do some deep breathing. May say a prayer or two. Make sure God's got my back in this chaos. I'll just kind of make sure, think about my match, what it is that I'm doing, how I get the most out of the stuff. But usually my pre-match ritual, especially when I'm like up next and I know that like the match before me just finished or something, then that's when I kind of like let that adrenaline out. Or I'll just start like hyping myself up. Like I'll just start talking under my breath, like, all right, man, you're gonna kill this. You're gonna go mess with people. Like, and just start hyping yourself up. You get a little barbaric, start cussing under your breath, firing yourself up, smacking yourself in the face, just getting that adrenaline pump. So by the time that beat hits on my music and I come through, I'm already fired up. So that's kind of how I approach it. So I try to stay really calm and tranquil up until that point, and then I just kind of like really like let it all out.
Gotcha. So something that we've done in all of these is we've let the current guest pose a question for the next guest. So my previous guest was actually a guy who he's been a wrestler for 24 years, and he is the owner and founder of Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling out in Denver. And the question that he posed is, can you say that each day you are doing something to achieve your goals in life and in wrestling?
Yeah, I think I do. I think I do have ADHD and I don't take medicine for it. So sometimes like I bounce back and forth between you know I'll get the sun later and just hyperfixation, but sometimes I'll just sit there for hours and just piddle on something, or I'll have an idea that I become obsessed with. But there's always at least a little something. I'm a big list guy, so every morning I'll get my coffee, I sit down, and I'll write out everything I need to accomplish that day. What are my goals for the day? What can I do to move a little closer towards that goalpost, even if it's something small? I think and that's how I approach editing too, especially when you're doing like feature length documentaries that are like over an hour long. It can be overwhelming cutting through like 40 hours of footage. But if you don't look at it as like, I got 40 hours of footage to go through. But if you're like, all right, today I'm going to get through an hour of it, you know, and just kind of compartmentalize little tasks. That's kind of how I
Yeah,
approach it, just doing a little bit of time. I think if you're trying to learn how to do something, just get 1% better at it every session. You don't have to like kill yourself and just stress yourself out by doing everything all at once. So just baby steps and will accumulate into something a lot bigger.
absolutely. So, since this is part of a series, do you have a question you would like to pose to the next guest? And I can go ahead and tell you who the next guest is going to be. The question does not have to be particular to them, but my next guest is actually going to be, I'm going to have apparently 10 members of Canada's largest faction, something called the Moment of Truth. I've never had this many guests on simultaneously, so I'm suspecting it'll probably end up being kind of like herding cats, but
That
but
is so many days. Yeah.
it's going to be fun. But so, do you have a question that you would like to pose? And like I said, it doesn't have to be particular to them. Just kind of just a thought question.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a lot of guys in the faction. So I'm trying to think of something related to that. Um, what is I guess their question could be, what is the hardest thing to coordinate when it comes to having a faction that is so big? Like, how do you guys do shows? How do you guys figure it out? Who goes in where? Like, if it's 10 people, I feel like that's kind of like there's got to be a constant kind of discussion or group chat or something. So, how do you go about functioning with a group with so many people?
That's actually a really good question. I'm glad that you came up with that. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Like,
So
yeah.
we're pretty much at the end of things now. So you mentioned a couple of things, but do you have any upcoming shows or anything at all that you'd like to give some hype to?
Yes, I got a few things coming up. So this Friday I'll be in Chattanooga for Jameson Shook's Hot to Go. I'll be wrestling for the Action World Title, and the following week I'll be in ICW No Holds Barred wrestling Otis Kogar in Detroit, and I got a few other things that are not been announced yet, so I can't really say. But also, I have 2 matches in Las Vegas at the Dive Bar. I forget the dates, but the first one will be for Marks R Us against UK deathmatch wrestler Big F and Joe. He's great, crazy. And then I'm the next night in the same building for Ruthless Pro Wrestling. I will be wrestling Dmitry Alexandrov, who is like basically just the Russian version of me. So we look very similar. and I'll be wrestling him. And we, like I said, we got Blood and Honey coming back last Sunday in June here in Atlanta. And I'm going to be Seven is going to do a show in Canton, Georgia, in May. I don't know the exact date, but that's all on my social media. So go follow me on there. I have a lot of random things going on at any given time. I say yes to way too many things. So come catch me at one of these shows, and I will shake your hand, whether it's covered in blood or not.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, as far as what we've got going, like I said, Wednesday, which is the 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern, I've got episode 102. Like I said, members of the largest faction in professional wrestling, Moment of Truth from Canada. And then on Thursday, the 27th, also at 7 p.m., I've got episode 103 with the Rockin' Moroccan Monday Night Mo Malik. And he's apparently getting a following, it looks like in the Midwest. So I'm definitely interested to get him on. But man, this has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I always love sitting down to talk about wrestling, man. It's what I love. So thank you.
You know, nerding out about this stuff with like-minded people is just the best thing in the world. It really and truly is.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, for those of you that have been watching this live, thank you. For those of you that'll be seeing this on replays and such, thank you for that. If you like what we've got going here, do the old like, comment, share, and subscribe. And before we wrap this up, do you have any final words, Nathan?
Yeah, just follow me on all the social medias. I'm Nathan Mowery on pretty much everything, and watch as the chaos unfolds as I dive deeper into the world of deathmatch wrestling, as I hack and slash every single opponent that gets in my way, because I am the Killbilly Nathan Mowery. Long live.
Well, I will be back Wednesday night, like I said, 7 o'clock, and in